This is a podcast with Clayton Southworth from the Southworth Group and Chris Airy from Companion Solutions. Welcome to our show, Leaders with Suspicions. I hope you enjoy.
Right. Great to meet you, Clayton. And
Great to meet you.
yeah, so do you mind just starting off by telling me who you are, your business, where you live, just some of the basics?
Yep, sure. So my name is Clayton Southworth. I am the founder of the Southworth Group. We operate out of Compass Real Estate on Cape Cod, Massachusetts. We focus on luxury real estate, regular real estate. We actually have a new construction guy on our team, so we do new construction projects. And we also have an investment guy, so we also do like investment property. So find a property, improve it, sell it, that sort of thing. So
Okay.
those are our specialties.
Amazing. Right. So, I mean, you know already, if you because I think you watched a couple of our podcasts already, that we've had a few people from the real estate industry. So, why don't you tell me where you fit in that real estate
Sure.
brokerage?
Yep. So what happened with me was I accidentally fell into it. So I didn't start off going for real estate. I didn't know what I wanted to do in high school, all those sorts of things. And then I moved to Australia on a work visa for a short period, and it just ended. And then I got an entry level job being a salesperson at a country club. And the way that I was able to do that was actually my dad founded a company. Um, that was called Southworth Development, and they've developed all over the place. So, Cape Cod, Bahamas, Scotland, Virginia, New Hampshire, Liberty National overlooking New York City, Arizona, etc. A very robust company, and they have properties all over the place. So I started in 2009 when the market wasn't so good. Um, and that was my introduction to real estate. So I did it from the developer perspective to begin with.
Okay.
Yep. And so that was a great way to get into it. Because there's something coming in when you have a developer role. When you have a developer role, it's a little bit different than having a pure commission sales role. So it allowed me to like kind of get started. Don't get me wrong, I was washing dishes at night to pay the rent. You know what I mean? Because those years were pretty lean.
Yeah.
So when people tell me how easy and amazing it is, I don't remember anyone telling me that in 2009. That's my
Yeah, they were tough
response
times,
back.
weren't
Right. But that's okay because I learned a lot. It really kind of cuts your character, kind of teaches you, you know, um, to really persevere through things and kind of finagle your way through it. I even had a property management company for a while just to, kind of have backup revenue sources. But then, everything started improving and I started getting better and better. I started doing newer developments, so taking on new construction developments. Um, and then finally, I kind of outgrew that role and wanted to grow more. So I left and started my own group, and it's been very fruitful.
Yeah, so let's just talk about that a little bit. So it sounded, like you meandered a little bit, and then you eventually found your niche in life about who you are as a human and where you connect in the real estate supply chain, and then you
Sure.
create a group of your own. Is that how it was?
Yeah, basically. Like I said, it wasn't I didn't wake up as a teenager and be like, I want to be a real estate broker. That wasn't what I was thinking at the time. It just kind of evolved that way. It has to do with your natural aptitudes in a lot of senses. I like working for myself. As a school age kid, when people told me what to do, I said why, not yes. And that got me in trouble. But when you work for yourself, you have to say, okay, why? And then you have to figure it out. And then you have to do it. And then when you do that well enough, you get paid. And when you don't do it well enough, you don't get paid. So through trial and error and having that inquisitive, slightly rebellious, but mostly just curious um, aptitude, that kind of put me in that direction. And then this just kind of, I tried it, it worked, and I kept going.
Okay, so you talked about a process there where you found it worked and it didn't work, but
Sure.
A lot of people aren't that self-perceptive. Okay. So were you that amazingly self-perspective? Were you with that amazingly self? I don't know. I'll try
Yeah,
speak.
perspective.
Yeah.
Yes. I would say that's one of my strengths, and that's really been a strength that has helped me in real estate. Because like I said, it's not me filling out the form for the test with the yes or no, questions. It's a psychological job. There's so much that goes into it that you can't teach in a school classroom. When you get your real estate license, they're basically teaching you how to not get screwed by the laws in the real estate business.
Yeah.
You have to do your disclosures and a couple of things like that. So there are some mechanics that you can't avoid. You just have to know them, understand them, and do them. But beyond those pretty boilerplate forms, um, you might have a single mother who's really struggling and trying to understand things. You might have a really successful career person who, just is looking for something for their family. You might have, a divorce. You might have the perfect situation. You might have, there's just so many different types of people. um, so being able to meet them, look them in the eye, kind of get a sense for who they are, and talk about every non-real estate thing will actually get you to the real estate sale. Which is kind of an anomaly, but it's true. It's when you get into people's minds and really understand what makes them tick, what doesn't, how, and you do it with the right mindset of in the spirit of helping, in the spirit of coaching, in the spirit of guiding, in the spirit of a positive win-win situation. Then it can be really successful and really rewarding in a lot of ways. So I like what I do. It's a wonderful thing.
So I can see how that you find your behaviors and report building allow people to want to buy off you or buy or sell through you. Yeah.
Yep.
Going
Yeah.
back to you as a person, it's quite different to say, I need to change, I need to improve, I'm not good at this, I'm good at this, and have that perception, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes that comes from mentors or people you meet along the way. Uh,
Yes. Yeah.
but
Yep.
but so tell me about the influences in your life. Who were they?
Sure. So they were teachers. Some of them just from grade school to whatever. Some of them were family friends. Some of them were my parents. Some of them were, just interactions I had with other kids at school, whether positive or negative. Each little thing taught me a lesson one way or another. Um, there was different bosses along the way that helped me. And then there's also my engagement in people. So I would look at people who are super successful and study them. So I'd just be saying, I wonder what this person does. And then I'd pull up their profile and, just kind of be like, that looks like it works. That looks like it doesn't. Let me try this one and let me try that one. And, but so as far as, so in that's a general scope, but then a little bit more, microscope, I'd say my dad was one of the biggest influencers on the real estate side of things. Um, just because he was a real estate developer. So he's run real estate offices. He's run, done some mega, mega developments. So these are places with a clubhouse, maybe 300 homes, 100 condos, tennis centers, fitness centers, kids camps, clubs, and even turf management farms and things of that nature. So, he's done quite a bit in this business. And, so I remember the first question I asked him was, I said, all right, I'm going to be a real estate agent. I got my license. How do I be good at this? What do I have to do to be good? And he said, once you do 20 deals, you might know something.
Right. Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that was his coaching, was like, go do it. So, kind of just get your hands dirty and, go at it. And, there's, I guess his coaching was a little bit more like, don't every time something fails, learn from it, um, and just keep going and just keep trying and keep, tinkering. Um, so I guess that's a lot of what he taught me. And he taught me that when people are doing things, just because they do something doesn't mean you deserve it. So I'll give you an example. The one of the best lessons he ever taught me was I was doing a new construction deal,
Yeah.
and so I got the buyer, did the whole thing, got them to sign the contract. It was the right fit for them. They were qualified, yada yada. Did all my things, and I handed it over to the builder and said, "Okay, I sold the thing. Now you got to build it." And and I kind of, went, great. I did my job, and moved on. Looking for the next lead and looking for the next whatever. Well, as we got closer to building, the crown molding wasn't right and the thing wasn't installed right. And I don't remember all the specifics, but it just wasn't being delivered by the builder the way that the buyer wanted it to be delivered. So he started complaining, and he wanted money back. He was ready to pull out of the deal. The whole thing would fall apart. So I went to him and said, "Hey, I did my job, right? So why should I have to suffer if I do my job and the rest of the people can't do their jobs?"
Right.
That's what it seems like to me at the time. You know what I mean? Like, talk to me. Like, what's happening? And he turned to me and said, "It's your fault." I said, "How do you reckon that?" You know what I mean? How is it my fault that, the delivery wasn't delivered right when I'm the salesperson? He says, "Your fault because you didn't take it from A to Z. Your job is not just to sign a contract. Your job is to take the person, the client, through every single part until everything is done. Whether that's new construction, whether that's a short transaction, whether it's anything, your job is every single step along the way. You are their guide. You are the one that's in charge of, you're kind of the quarterback of that whole process, whether or not you're the person executing that particular job." And he was right. And that's one lesson I really carried, was you take care of everything from A to Z. You make, and not that you're out there swinging the hammer, but you're keeping the communication going. You're connecting. You are guiding. You are, every time there's a problem, you're making sure that it works. And that's, it takes a lot of persistence. It takes a lot of knowledge. It takes a lot of discipline, but those were important lessons to learn as a real estate broker.
So I heard you say Scotland before. So you had a load of US stuff, and then there's a random one over in Scotland, yeah?
Yes. Yep.
So I'm guessing Scottish ancestry, yeah?
Yes, but that's by coincidence. There was no, I didn't connect with any distant relatives. But yes, there is a little bit of Scottish in me for sure.
Yeah, because I don't know if you watched the program Succession, yeah?
Everyone tells me I've got
Yeah.
to watch that show, and I have not watched it yet. But yes, I've been told that, yeah, there's some
It's sounding
similarities.
like a familiar story. A Scottish ancestry father,
Yeah, yeah,
has his own business and how he teaches the next generation. It's
yeah.
starting to sound a bit like an episode from there.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
very
It's
funny.
definitely, yeah. People have told me like I've got to watch that show, and I really should, because to make matters more funny, when my dad sold his company, my brother now runs that corporation. So
Okay.
yeah, so we all have our different things and all went different places. So I'm one of four boys. So yeah, I've been told that, yeah,
It
that's yeah,
sounds like you all came out better than the kids in Succession. I
yes,
think you're all right. Yeah, yeah. Okay. So let's get to one last thing before I ask a bit about the industry. So why did you pick the niche? I mean, looking at your website, it's relatively upper end or good
sure.
quality higher end properties. Was there any particular process? Because one of the things that people talk about in marketing is, is it how do you win? Is it promotion? Is it place? Is it price? And so on. So did you go through any of that systemic thinking, or you just say, I like this area and these are the properties that you buy and sell in this area? How did it work?
Yeah, a little bit intentional and a little bit accident. So I'd say a combination. So by accident, in the sense that, I was working, I happened to have family connections on Cape Cod and happened to move back there. So part of it was, being in the right place at the right time. So if my family was from, I don't know, Lansing, Michigan, or middle of Dakota, or, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what the average rates are there, but I'm sure it's different than Cape Cod. You know what I mean? So it's the location really matters. There's some valleys in like California that are like, every house is $10 million. You know what I mean? Like, so you have to, part of it's just based on where you're located is what will shape you into what you become. The other part of it though too is when I was doing the private clubs, you know, um, there was a little bit of a cap. You're kind of restricted to a local zone, and I started getting bored. I started getting complacent. Not that it wasn't a wonderful place, but that it was, I couldn't pursue that American dream, if you will. I couldn't like just like grow and expand. And I just had the itching that like if I'm going to do this, I want to crush it. So like if I'm going to crush it, I got to sell the multi-million waterfront homes with docks. You know what I mean? So like, okay, how do I do that? And then start studying those people. So that's where the intention came in. And I said, okay, I want to like, if I'm going to do this, like, let's go, and yeah, so yes, there's, being in the right place and then setting the intention. Is what I'd say is how I got there. And yeah, it's like, if I'm going to do this, I want to sell cool homes. You know what I mean? Like I want to have fun with it. And that sounds more exciting to me than, I don't know, other models. And don't get me wrong, there's very many successful people that sell, $300,000 condos and are, very, very successful, wealthy brokers because they sell those 5 times a week. You know
Yeah,
what I
yeah.
mean? Like, but that's a different model. And I wasn't interested in that as much. Not that, and I love my clients. So I actually have a $300,000 condo under agreement right now because one of my clients wanted one because it was right for their situation. So I will sell to all of my clients, no matter where they are, whether it's their kids, whether it's their dream home, whether it's their, turnkey condo. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like, so I will sell whatever it takes, and take care of my clients. That's also a big, big deal to me. Um, but I like focusing on luxury. It's fun.
Yeah, so I mean, I think all of the real estate brokerage and podcasts I've done recently, everyone does talk about looking after your customer because they'll come back at some point in the future, or they have the next generation and so on. So that's quite valuable. But I'm just wondering, do you have a business plan? How,
Yes.
yeah. Tell me about what was the process, how you built your business plan?
Through a lot of failure. um, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean in a very positive way. So when I started, I didn't really know what I was doing. But I learned a lot really quickly, and in some ways, I feel like I've failed at more things than a lot of people have tried. But each thing taught me a different thing. So I spent a lot of time in my early years failing. But my business plan kind of evolved. So it's kind of like, okay, I learned that if I get really good at a couple things, I'll be really valuable at those couple things. And I learned that if I am valuable at those things, I will have a presentation that works. I will um, look the part, talk the part, be the part, and really understand the part. So like that means studying, so like for fun. So like, what are the other homes on the market going for? I need to know those main streets that have the properties I want to sell, and I need to know the neighbors. I need to know the communities. I need to know the uh, profile of the right buyers that come in. I need to know where they come from. I need to know what demographics they come from. I need to know all sorts of things. And then from there, that's not good enough. That's only the facts. You need to take the facts. Then you need to build a relationship with the people. Then once you have the relationship with the people, then you need to tell stories and engage and do all the psychological things with all that wonderful information. So it's a little bit of a roundabout way, but you cultivate that panache to what you do as a service, and then you build relationships. And so the business plan is really having an elite team, a smaller elite team that really focuses on their clients, that's very customer service orientated, that really delivers, that's very conscientious on how they deliver, And I'd rather have a few good people in a couple of great places rather than having a huge team doing huge volume. So that's the grand plans. So like have a couple agents in Boston, one in Chatham. I'm in Osterville, which is a very good place to be. So like, and then just growing that lean but awesome team.
Okay. So I'm hearing that your business strategy is organically grow based
Yes,
on trust, trustable employees that want to stay with you to create
yes,
sustainability in the business. Okay. But
yep,
how do you turn that into your plan for 2025 or your plan for, July and August? How do you turn that into a day-to-day business plan? Or do you just ride the market because the market is the market? People buy and sell what they want. How do
yeah,
you how do you know
yeah.
when you're doing a good job or your business is doing well?
A little bit of both. So part of it is, the right place at the right time. So the right buyer comes in for the right property and you bring it all together. So there's part of it that's just keeping your eyes and ears open and being ready whenever that moment strikes for whenever that thing is.
Yeah.
That's certainly one part of it. But the other part of it is creating your own luck. As far as staff members go, I don't care if I have the three team band that I have now or the 10 team band. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't, when those right people are come into my life, I will work with them. So I'm not really like, I'm not I'm not struggling to find new people, right? Um, and then as far as just taking care of your clients and creating opportunities, so like the investment opportunities. So like I have plenty of good clients who I've built great relationships with that are fortunate enough to have well-heeled pockets. So instead of me just saying, "Oh, wait for the deal or wait for them to need to buy," that's kind of lazy selling. I'm going, okay, I'm looking at this property, I'm looking at that property, I'm putting together a proposal, I'm seeing how I can get investors to get involved. Maybe I have the seller get involved, and now I'm really getting creative in how I bring all the right pieces together and structure a deal. So now all of a sudden I have the finance guy doing spreadsheets, trying to understand a model that works, and I'm, somewhat creating a deal out of thin air. And I'm looking at properties, I'm seeing how many days they are in the market. I'm studying, well, this property seems to have this, so I'm going to talk to that broker, and I'm networking. And so, if you just sit back and wait for business, I think you'll be kind of a sore broker. But if you go out and hunt for it, uh, there's plenty of opportunities out there. You have to be tenacious a bit.
Again, I'm hearing that it's about you putting people together, right? Um, you're thinking about the connections and matching people to the right job. Can I just come back to the employee piece because
Yeah.
it's quite fascinating watching many businesses because many just go, all right, we need to recruit and grow, and they go and recruit and grow, and later on they go, oh, maybe we got the wrong people. Let's lay some people off and let's recruit different ones. Okay,
Mhm.
so um, and you said, I think that it's quite easy for you to find good people.
Yes, it is easy for me to find good people, but it has to be the good people that really want to do it, that are really in the right position to do it. Um, so um, yeah, it's funny because so when you recruit an agent, it's also funny because it's real estate.
Right.
Because if you're that good a broker, why do you want to be on someone else's team when you can keep your own? You know what I mean? Like, why do you want to share any of what you make if you're crushing it, right?
Yeah.
So the really good ones are hard to get, and the ones that don't have any experience are easier to get. So I've certainly turned down more people than I've accepted. Um, which is a good thing, and not because I don't, I want them to get the right experience. And I know that I'm too busy hunting my own deals to be, I'm not taking people in and training them to the nth degree, but I'm slowly kind of building my infrastructure so I could in the future. But I don't know. Right now, I just kind of be like to be lean and strong, because when you become a if you have 30 agents working for you, you're spending all your time running around managing the 30 agents. You know what I mean? Like I don't want that. So I'd rather have you know, a lean cut with low maintenance, rather than have a huge cut of high maintenance.
So there's two things in that. One is just tell me about how you know you found the right employee, right? What's
Sure.
your recruitment
Good
process?
question.
How you do that? Yeah.
Yeah. So you same thing with the client in a lot of ways. You need to really understand the person. You need to look them in the eye. With an employee, I take it a couple steps farther. You know, I want to come to your house. I want to see how you live. I want to, like, you know what I mean? Like, really, like, you know, really, really understand the person, because if they're representing me, I need to know that they're really, really, the right profile. It's about how you carry yourself. It's about your tenacity. It's about your situation. Are you retired, working on an income, doing this for fun, or are you doing this because you have a young family to support? So I really want to understand the situation. I want to understand your 10-year plan. I want to. I need. It takes another layer of just really understanding the people, and then making sure that they have the right aptitudes and skills to do it. If there's any lack of skills, those can be taught. I'm not concerned about that. But I'd rather see the person who's very socially aware, engaged, um, fun to work with, you know, has a sense of humor, but knows how to not take it over the line. um, Someone who, I don't know, just is. Uh, if you have the right social skills, I can teach you the technical skills. And I'm not concerned about that. But when you have the right ambiance as a person, um, that's someone who, I'd be willing to grow. But for the most part, the people that already have that have along the way also learned skills. So it's that, and that's why there's so few of them that really fit well. Um, so it really is, a specialty.
Okay. Um, but it sounds like it's your personal judgment and experience. Yeah, you've not found some tools or tests or something that substitute for that
Yeah.
effective human react integrate interaction. Okay, right.
Yep. And then also too, that's the other part is, is it someone that I could have a beer with on a Friday night? You know what I mean? Like, I have to gel with them, because if we're going to work together, I need to, that's just I don't know. I'd rather have a lot of fun doing it on a smaller team than, like, not.
Do you think that's a facet of this industry and other similar ones like recruitment where it's all about the people?
Yeah, and I wouldn't say it's all about it, because you have to also adapt to all the new technology that's coming and all the new laws that have changed, which that's a whole nother conversation. But you have to, be able to, yeah, I mean, the relationships, is one of the main things. So you have relationships, you need to have that, and you also have to have the, prowess to actually accomplish the job. So if you have those two things, you're going to be successful.
Okay. Just going back on what you said a few minutes ago, it seemed a little bit to me that you were not scaling the business because you hadn't really found the people who could take that managing 30 people off your hands. Yeah. It,
Yeah, it's, like I said, I want it to grow organically. So, I want it to be, so we just haven't gotten there yet too, in a sense, and that's okay. You know what I mean? Like, it's not, I'm not desperate to be that person. You know what I mean? Like, if that grows the right way, I'm happy for it. And if, it's just a couple of people doing awesome sales, I'm happy for that too. But yeah, it's, you know, when the right people come, then I'll scale.
because you could just go out and recruit a chief operating officer, couldn't you? And then
Yes.
take
Yeah.
all of that off your hands. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm interested in why you haven't done that.
Um, I just haven't. um, it's, when it works, don't fix it, I guess, has been, and, but I'm not opposed to that in the future. That very well could happen in the future. I feel like if I got a couple more all stars, then, maybe that would be the right time. But right now, just aren't not quite at that tipping point where you make that call. So I'm just not there right now.
Okay, fine. You teased me about talking about technology. Our background is we're a data and tech business, right? So we
Sure.
provide clients with practical apps, integrate various systems, make sense of unstructured data. We can create dashboards, we can create tools that allow what we call suspicion engine, which is to sort of effectively be like the owner 24/7, watching the data flow through the business and going, aha, I need to look at that.
Right.
So we're always quite interested in technology. So you talked about tech is changing in this industry. Tell me a bit more about that.
Yes. Is it ever? So when I first started, there was no Zillow, or if there was, it was, not anything people were like cued into. You know what I mean? So, and the people I was trained by, they barely had the internet. You know what I mean? I mean, go back to 1995, and you had to dial up with AOL. You know what I mean? That like you never really used and didn't care about. And then go back before then, and you had a newspaper that came out once a week, and if you didn't talk to a broker, you didn't even know what was even available. So, brokerage was a much more like, um, you know, isolated. You had to talk to a broker or else you couldn't even do anything type of business once upon a time. That was not too long ago. Um, and then the internet came, and in the beginning, it didn't really change very much. And then, then all these syndications came, and then there's, Zillow. One thing that's really interesting with their model is it's like, oh, click here to learn more about this property. And what you're being routed to is the broker who paid Zillow for a placement ad. So you're not being, targeted to the right person. It's all, who will pay the most money wins type of games. But that started shifting the real estate industry because all of a sudden you didn't, all those hardworking brokers weren't necessarily um, the creme of the crop that they were once upon a time. And one by one, everything started changing. And now we're at a point where AI is really taking over. And we actually have at Compass, there's like, a lot of very highly skilled AI people. That's all they do is AI. So now, for listing, I'm typing in the address and everything's autofilling on all the square foot and all that different type of stuff. I don't have to go hunt for all the information anymore. I can have a description written for me that's written perfectly, or near perfectly, and I still have to tweak it. But it's like, starting with the draft is much quicker than starting from scratch. So it saved me a lot of time in getting things done. But it's also been hard because, I spent, the majority of my development without this stuff. So now it's like you have to relearn new tools and new ways, and those that can do it scale that much quicker on an individual basis, and those that don't do it fall behind. So the technology has just progressed, and it's progressing a lot more. So like I'm sure that what I know now is going to be outdated in a couple of years. um, and then the laws have changed. So there's two big laws that are changing in America right now.
Okay.
One of them was the buyer broker agency, right? So now instead of just historically, everything kind of evolved the way this evolved, saying that if you're an MLS participant, you have to pay a buyer broker's fee, and if you have to pay a buyer broker's fee, usually they just split the fee for one person brought the seller, one person brought the buyer, right? Um, and that worked for a long time. But then this lawsuit came out and they said, we no longer do you have to pay a buyer broker fee. That's your election, not you don't have to if you're having a property on MLS. So now we have to have buyer agency agreements and have to do things kind of more like a commercial broker rather than a residential broker, right? So that's one big change that came. Then the other big change that's happening right now is called clear cooperation. So again, going back to MLS, if you wanted to be an MLS participant, you had to have clear cooperation with other brokers, which means you had to play by the same rules. So you have to enter it on the market, then you have days on market counted, and they keep everything consistent with every single listing so that no broker can game another broker. That's called clear cooperation. Now, with that, it's all changed because now that same lawyer who sued over the buyer broker stuff is suing over clear cooperation.
Right.
At least that's my understanding. So what he's saying is that how dare you, MLS, tell the seller how they can sell their property? Let them sell it however they want to sell it, whether it's on market, off market, syndicated, whether it's on MLS, off MLS, whether it's network selling, whether it's on your own. You know what I mean? Like whatever it is, MLS should not be telling you how you have to sell your property.
So like freedom of speech for selling, right? Okay.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. So anyway, so that whole change is happening right now. And the reason that this is important to technology is because the technology is based on MLS. The technology is based on the old way of doing things. So now we have new technology that's going to come in and change with the laws. And so being on top of that curve can really change your game. So you can have, at Compass, we have private exclusives, so I can sell to other Compass agents on a private exclusive basis. But now with these changes, those rules will probably change. And so that's one way in which, the real estate industry is really going through a revolution right now. So in a couple of years' time, it's going to look super different.
Okay. So you're talking about tech changing for regulatory reasons, and you've also talked about effectively the early days of AI and Gen AI creating effectively the words and collateral you need to do your process. Yeah.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely.
So, for a long time in the property buying and selling industry, people have talked about blockchain smart contracts and all sorts of stuff, and it's never really happened, right? Uh,
Yeah.
Probably because you have to take a lot of the legal industry with you,
Yeah.
in terms of those processes. So, can you imagine 5 years out, what do you think it's going to be like?
Yeah. In 5 years, I think there's going to be a lot of changes. So I think that there's the 5 year and the 10-year mark. There are two different marks. So in 5 years, I think buyer agency won't change. I think that the new changes that have been made will stick. And I think the clear cooperation will be completely changed. So in 5 years' time, we'll have a whole, for instance, if you want to learn about my listings, you can subscribe to my Instagram and my newsletter and be in on exclusives before they go on the market. That way, like if you have a very unique house, let's say you have a 7,000 square foot house, that house is very valuable to a few people. There's not that many people that want 7,000 square feet, right? So instead of putting it on the market and having it sit for 3 years and looking like a very stale, overpriced listing, put it as a private exclusive with a person like me. And then, that way, when I get those right buyers that are maybe I get one buyer a year that's looking for 7,000 square feet, I can pitch it to that person. And I have to pitch it to 3 or 5 people like that before one of them might be really interested. And that might take 3 to 5 years. But instead of being on Zillow for 3 to 5 years, you know what I mean? You can get it
And it
done.
talks
And
about, yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. And then also too, you can come and start selling your home before you're ready to move. You know what I mean? So like if you know you're gonna move in the next 5 years or 3 years and you have a very unique house, you might want to do one of these new campaigns. You see what I mean? So like there's a lot of different uses where selling differently would be very beneficial. So I think that the in the next 5 years we're gonna see those changes. Right. So that's the 5 year change. The 10-year change is going to be AI. So one thing that's already in prototype that's a little bit scary for some brokers is having an AI real estate agent,
Yeah.
right? So and so I think there will be a market for that, and I do think that that will thin out the broker market a little bit. Um, I think I think it'll thin out a little bit more at the lower end. So if you have if you have a condo building, let's say, and all the units are about the same, there's really not much difference. You know what I mean? Then like I think AI selling might be super interesting in those types of models because you can kind of just like take the square footage, take the whatever, and kind of computate a price, and at least you're in the ballpark, right? Even then, what if you're on one floor versus another and you have one view versus not? What if one person's looking at the trash can and the other one's looking at the skyline? You know what I mean? Like, how do you decipher that value difference? How do you do that? A robot can't do that. And I don't know if any technology, I don't care how smart it is, that really can do that. I guess I can take the pictures and say, and use beautiful verbiage. So they can do that. There is some level that they can do it, but you know, a real estate agent, a really good one, can take you through the whole experience of it. They can, I'm taking someone in, I'm learning about them, and then I'm using stories and examples and all sorts of different tools to be able to find the right person who's really going to tick and really find the right situation so that they find a lot of value and then they pay the right value. A robot can't do that, you know, and I don't think they're going to be able to do it in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, or dare I say even 100 years. So I think there's always going to be a place for a real estate broker. But I do think that the vastness of that place for a broker will be thinned out, depending on the situation.
Yeah, I mean, with my knowledge of tech and particularly search technology across different industries, I think it will be more transformative than you just said. I don't disagree with you that there'll always potentially be a need for a broker
Yeah.
at a point in the process because buying a property is a very human, emotional process. Yeah. But
Yeah.
there's two particular things I can imagine very sophisticated search taking place where um, it can listen to somebody and turn their request into a very multifaceted search and
Yeah.
then go through all of that process, instead of scrolling through pages, right? It can do that whole part of the process where it will effectively say, here you are, right? Here's a range of very personalized, selected properties for you to look at. Uh,
Yes.
the in terms of that valuation piece, I was sitting there thinking of it. So I've spent many years in machine learning, and you know, effectively, you just need to train that behavior, right? So if there was a broker that kind of want to put themselves out of the job, then they could
Right.
effectively train the machine about, well, I selected this one or I reduced this one by $5,000 because of, right? And those patterns can effectively be learnt over time. So um, I think it's always a race about when somebody's going to do it. But I think, the whole concierge feel of
Yeah.
brokerage. Um, I think, humans have been wired a certain way for, depending on your beliefs, a long time. Um, and I don't think AI is going to change that in the short term. So I think that
Yeah.
very emotional layer of it will exist, which may change the role of a real estate broker because
Yeah.
the mechanical stuff, I can see AI doing a lot of that, as you described, at a faster
Sure.
pace.
Yep. Which, by the way, I think will make brokers better on the grand scheme of things. Some brokers are very tech savvy and very good at entering things, but most people that are of that aptitude go into accounting, go into other ventures where that's much more the day to day. The brokers that really exceed are the ones that are very good socially. And so the ones that have the machine learning technology behind them that do the social part and don't have to focus on all the technical details that they can get in trouble for that take them longer to do.
Yeah.
I think in a lot of ways the brokers that are in that world um, will be very happy and successful because they will be doing what they're good at.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, whoever's listening out there, get in touch if you want some clever search ML driven technology, then, maybe you need to do it before somebody else does it and eat your lunch, as they say.
Yeah.
So, moving on a little bit in terms of data and KPIs, yeah. I mean, just tell me a little bit about you as the boss in terms of how you manage your financials, your numbers, your KPIs. Have you outsourced that, insourced that? Do you look at it yourself? Do you have somebody that does that? Or is it just, yeah, I know we sold this many last week, it's feeling okay. How do you do the rear view mirror piece?
I work very closely with my bookkeeper, my accountant, who is, an essential. When I first started a property management company, I took a Fred Pryor seminar on accounting and tried to do it all myself. So I bought QuickBooks, I downloaded it to my computer, and I, actually learned a lot. So, I can read a balance sheet, I can do a P&L, I can I can do a lot of those things, but it was tedious. I did not like it. I'm not well suited for that business. I needed to know it well enough to read it and to understand it. But I have an accountant that does that for me, and I refuse to run my business without my accountant. So
Okay.
she's a godsend to me. So that is anyone who wants to run a real estate business, whether on their own or whether as a group, you need a good accountant. That's one non-negotiable in my book, because you really, you need to understand the numbers. You need to understand what your production is. You need to understand your averages. You need to understand, and then the accountant can only take you so far. They'll take you on, your tax returns and your, all that type of stuff, which you have to do, right? But then there's other part that I do, which is the forecasting. The forecasting, you have to have the business knowledge to do it. So I need to say, okay, if I'm spending my time doing email marketing campaigns versus going to parties, versus a postcard campaign, versus online retargeting, there's a lot of tools that we have to use to get these wonderful properties. I mean, you're up against some really good competition, so you have to have a really good arsenal of tools.
I
To
hear you just say that parties are your part of your go-to-market strategy.
Yes, absolutely.
Fantastic. I finally found the business I want to work.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you have to go out there and have fun because, you know, and I mean, I've seen some of the funniest sales too. You know what I mean? Where like you're just so some people are doing it at the bar. I'm actually not a huge drinker, but I
Yeah.
like to go do things and have fun. So I'm going to like a mini putt contest next week. You know what I mean? Like as an example, with some friends who are at a golf club. You know, um, so that's a great example where you're just casually chit chatting. Oh yeah, my cousin loves golf, and they've always wanted their Cape home. Their kids are in high school. Oh, interesting. Tell me more. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And then you kind of engage that conversation. Then all of a sudden, a year later, you have a great buyer. Who's looking for that home once the kids go to university. You know what I mean? Like, but so going out and talking to people and engaging them and them knowing that you're the real estate guy. And then, yeah, but so if I hadn't gone to that putt, I wouldn't know that person who wouldn't become a buyer, so I wouldn't just say going out and partying, but I'd say going out.
Oh, okay. I've gone off it now.
Yeah,
All
yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'd say partying in the right way. You know what I mean? Like, but you have to, yeah, people have to know you. You know what I mean? If nobody knows you because you're just behind a computer all day, um, that's limited. But
Yeah.
yes, you have to have fun.
Again, you're back to the human factor, getting to know people, building some trust. Yeah, those basic human instincts that we all have. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, tell me a little bit about the problems in your business. What upsets you? What would you like to fix?
Um, Great question. Probably something I spend a little bit more time on, but yeah, I mean, I go back to the multiplier effect when you talk about problems. And again, I am a person focused business entity. So the multiplier effect is where you take every single skill. So let's say reading, writing, emails, response time, psychological prowess, um, you know, um, ability to communicate, language, health. You take every single thing that goes into your performance, right?
Yeah.
And then you put a grade next to them, 1 through 10. So 1 is really bad, 10 is excellent, right? Um, and then you take every single skill and you multiply them. If you have a 0 under anything, that can throw off the whole thing because multiplied by 0 equals 0, right? No matter what numbers you have. But so what you do is you find out, okay, I'm really good at being social. I'm really good at, talking to people. I'm really good at getting out to events. But geez, I'm really bad at my clerical side of the job. I have a 4 there. You know what I mean? Like, and then so I try to find whatever my multiplier effect weakness is and work on that. And if I can't work on it, I try to outsource it. Right. So that's in a nutshell how I work on the weak points, is trying to make sure that, okay, I have this task that needs to get done. One of them for me was social media. I am not, I don't know how many likes I have. I don't know what's popular or not. When somebody does something, I don't know if it means this or that. You know what I mean? Like, I'm so clueless when it comes to social media. I just don't, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not keeping up with the Joneses, if you will, right?
Okay.
At least not on social media, and even beyond, I'm not like that, right? So I outsourced to my wife, who's very talented at it. She is awesome at it. She knows, how to follow things. She knows what it means. She knows what to do. She's good at multitasking. She's good at, like, doing those things that only takes her 2 minutes. She's good with the technology. So, that's one example where my multiplier effect went up because I was able to outsource that part. And there's some things I can't outsource. Some things you just have to do. You know what I mean? If I have a client, I need to write them an email. I mean, I can't have my wife, I can't outsource email writing to my wife. You know what I mean? So there's some things that you can't outsource, but there's some things you can. So I try to make that score the best it is. So I'd say working on your weak points is the best way to make yourself better.
Okay. Very interesting, the multiplication effect. Yeah, I like that idea. Very good. So we're sort of coming to the end of our time.
Sure.
So this is the moment of self-reflection, really. So
Okay.
what advice do you wish somebody had given you 20 years ago?
Um,
Again, back to the Succession movie, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, the advice I wish I had been given, um, I wish that I had not put so much emphasis on all my failures. Yeah, I wish that I'd put more emphasis on, you know, um, all the things I can do right. Because I guess early on I was, a little bit. I guess you could say, as a young guy, I'm talking like teenage years. Had a little bit of low self esteem because I was not the all star. I wasn't on the AP class for the whatever it is. I wasn't on the whatever. So I thought, geez, I'm really non exceptional. You know what I mean? And not that I'm exceptional now, but I wish that I had known, that when you work with what you do have as skills and you hone them, no matter what those skills are, they can really be amazing. So I wish I had understood that better.
Okay. And you can't give the same answers for this. What advice would you give to others entering the real estate brokerage industry?
Yeah. What I would say is, it's a very funny business. It's not the business for, if you got all A's in school and were, how, tell me how high to jump how high, like if you were like, a very proper, well functioning, follow the rules like person, um, you will have some successes in some parts of real estate. But as an agent, I would say that real estate would be hard. I think that the person who, is socially aware, kind of like, get stuff going, like is creative, crafty, um, you know, conscientious, persistent, engaging. If you have those types of skills, it's a great career. It's a great way to go. So, you know, if you feel like you're a little bit lost and don't know which way to go, try real estate.
Okay. So the industry for people with a bit of game and a bit of hustle, right?
Yeah,
Not
and it's a wonderful life. So it's funny because, like I said, I did not set out one day and say I want to be a realtor. I just, kind of tried different things. I tried this and it really worked. So I guess, yeah, it's funny because you do have to cut your own way, and that's part of the fun of it.
okay. So we'll wrap up now, Clayton. If you could just say, I guess if anyone's looking at a property in wherever, then get in touch. Please sell your business for a minute.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like I said, I focus on Cape Cod, Nantucket, and the South Shore are probably my hot spots. So those are the areas where I really excel. As far as selling goes, like I said, I've been doing this since 2009. Um, so there's so many different, every deal teaches me something new, and I hope to teach you something new. And also just find you the right thing. So if you are looking for properties in that area, I can really help. Or if you're looking to sell in those areas, especially, I can really help.
Okay. Thank you, Clayton. Thank you for the time.
Thank you.
That's a wrap. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.